Ladies and gentlemen, this is the second installation of the Immortal game. This time around we're going to take a look at the game between G2 and RNG 2018 at the World Championship, where Perkz has a performance that can only be rated a 10 out of 10. It is definitely one of the strongest performances out of any player because the precision and the level that Perkz is performing at in this game, together with his trusted compadre Jankos in this one, is truly a sight to behold even today, even to this day. In my mind, he managed to do something that Faker couldn't even manage to do, busting out a Game 5 LeBlanc in a situation where the champion isn't even that strong, which, if you contextualize to what is probably Pawn's Immortal game, where he picks the Morgana into the LB and they created a whole draft plan around the LB. Of course, that situation was a little bit more extreme, and that is a whole different conversation by itself. But this is a player picking LeBlanc in a moment where it's do or die, and LeBlanc is often contextualized in a sense that often you need to outperform your opponent in order to achieve the full potential of LeBlanc. And this particular game, Perkz really managed to do so. For those who don't know, the Immortal game series is something that I've started now. If you wanted to see previous videos of it, there is one that we did with Ruler and his Game 3 against T1 at the 2017 World Championship. The Immortal game is basically a game that needs to be remembered, should be remembered, and is remembered for the quality and the performance level of it. But in my mind, in order to truly grasp the weight and the gravitas of a game, it's important to understand the history and what got both teams to that place and the players surrounding that situation. So G2, if we look at the rosters of the EU season that particular year, G2 in Spring Split, they fell short in the finals against Fnatic. This is coming into the summer season. We're just going to take a look at the rosters. This was the Schalke roster with Upset, Vander, Nuktok, Amazing, and Vichichachi. This was a roster that was doing quite well for themselves. This is the roster that we managed to lose against in the semi-finals in this summer split. They had a very, very good, strong understanding of the game, a very strong identity too that we had a tough time cracking. Fnatic, this was the 2018 Fnatic, of course, the one with Irisang, Reckless, Caps, Broxa, Bwipo and Soaz, playing both roles together, and of course Bwipo playing bot lane together with Hilisang. More on the meta topic a little bit later after we went through the rosters. And then of course G2, who had Wunder and Jankos, Yanan and Wadid, that went through a big rebuild here coming into, of course, 2018. They acquired Wunder and Jankos, and then they grabbed Wadid and Yanan and Grabs from Rokat. They were kind of a wildcard team in 2017 that managed to take some victories over the best of the best, and this is the bot lane that they decided to slot in to this particular roster. This was right after Sven and Mithi, of course, left for TSM, and that was not the most successful venture because G2, of course, at G2 they're winning back-to-back splits, and in their separation they were struggling a little bit more. The star of this show is of course Perkz. Coming into summer season, there was some change up in the AD carry position. We had some nerfs that made many AD carries flee the position. So us at Vitality, we were boot camping, and we came back, and when we were back in Europe after scrimming in China, we came back to a world of Heimerdinger bot lane, a world of Janna AD carry, a world of funnel, a world of this is not regular gameplay that we practice in China. So there was a lot to adjust to. And a big spearhead of that was of course Yanan with his Heimerdinger, which was a very strong champion in the lane, and I still think it's really strong, very underrated champion. Very happy to see it more and more in support, because the raw potential of the champion is very high, and You just need the circumstance where you can get value out of your turrets, and I think that's easy to recreate. Very tough to gank, very tough to pressure, hammering it, generally speaking, not only in the super position. You had, of course, Bwipo playing Swain bot, Vladimir bot, Victor bot. There was also the occasional Mordekaiser, if I remember correctly. I remember that he even played Galio in the bot lane. And then there was the occasional Zyra Khan and Kaiser still showing up every now and then. Internationally at the time, what was funny is that you still had some AD carries still playing AD carries. So we came back, right? And this was the time where you had a situation where Reckless benched himself, right? In summer. And there was also the whole concept of funneling. I remember many games where there was a Shen, Talia, Vitality versus G2. They played Talia, Shen, Brand, this funnel composition that we just couldn't break. They were full AP, and there was many cheeky ways of approaching the game. But G2 was always avoiding the harsh truth. The harsh truth was that in a situation where the game or the draft was bot-centric, that they would struggle. And that was always the main thing that G2 was trying to avoid, and always trying to set themselves up in a way where that weakness wasn't exposed within the game. And when it came into playoffs, Misfits that they played against, they actually managed to get 3-0'd by them. This was a massive shock, you know? You had a Spring Split, you know, there was always this aura around G2 that they would figure it out, because Spring Split, they went all the way to the finals, of course. Luckily, with this quarterfinals exit, they still had enough points to still play the regional qualifier. As you can see here, there was the Misfits Kalista game into the Braum, and they played the Braum Cog. And GP needs to find value with his ultimate somehow. And this was a game that is very centered around bottom side, right? You have the Cho'Gath into the GP pick, and then you have the Kalista aggressive lane with the Alistar that was very strong at the time. And then you had the Varus Morgana lane with the Ezreal Braum. Varus Morgana needs to make sure that they punish the Ezreal Braum. And then the same thing later as well with the Varus, and then the Braum Draven gets locked in right away. Draven being a very strong pick into Alistar because you can cancel the combo, and then the Braum obviously is something that you wanted to deny, and you wanted to make sure that the Draven is not playing into a Braum, right? Because the Braum shield can get plenty of value into a Draven. There was a situation with Schalke as well. It was very unfortunate because Schalke, a big part of the Schalke roster actually got very sick after this event. Very sick. They couldn't practice as well, and their preparation to the regional qualifier, even though they managed to get themselves all the way to the final, they were really not in the condition to play or to perform. And considering all of this, you had a G2 that dropped out of quarters. They had a lot of time to prepare. They were scrimming, they were taking time off, and they were preparing the best way they can for the regional final. The regional final is, of course, the gauntlet, where you get to play the top 4 teams with the most points, get in, and then you play in a bracket system. And this is where G2 managed to make the whole run to then beat out Schalke in the final and then go to the World Championship. The meta at the World Championship would come to be the biggest blessing for G2. It was a very top-centric meta, where the champions with the highest presence were champions that could play both in mid and in top, and these champions would just define games. It would be Akali, Irelia, Urgot, Aatrox, and then, of course, on the sideline, our dear little Sion. These champions would always have a very high presence because they're all insanely OP. They were insanely OP, very strong. This was the Aatrox that revived. This was the Urgot that just, you know, people started realizing that this reworked Urgot is unbelievably strong and broken. Irelia having decent matchups into these champions as well. Her receiving buffs. This was the Akali as well that was insanely strong. In the bot lane, you had Xayah and Kai'Sa defining the meta, and then you had champions being picked into those as so-called counters. So you saw the occasional Lucian Braum, you saw the occasional Sivir into Xayah and Kai'Sa, and then in the jungle you had To my surprise, the outlier there is Nocturne, but you had a lot of gank-heavy junglers because it was the crab meta. The crab was spawning, you played Camille, you played Xin Zhao, and you played, of course, occasionally Lee Sin if your name was Broxa. It was a very heavy mid 2v2 meta. There was a heavy top lane centric meta in terms of the champions that were being played. So you had Ning, of course, running rampant on the Rift with his Camille. You had some niche picks here and there with champions that could fight. You had some Talia gameplay. You had some Olaf gameplay from the likes of Jankos. But all in all, the biggest key champions was the Camille, the Xin Zhao, and then in the super position, of course, it was like Rakan, Alistar, Braum, Tahm Kench, the good old chunky boys that would be very strong in 3v3s around mid and just would provide your team with Engage and CC. So leading into this quarterfinal, RNG was the team that everyone thought was going to win Worlds because RNG beat IG in the LPL finals and they were looking very, very dangerous. RNG was looking monstrous. They seemed like they had mastered the way of playing the game. But then again, the change in the top side would become RNG's biggest detriment. They would hold on to the Sion and they would struggle to figure out how to play the Aatrox side of things, how to play the Irelia side of things, and how to play the Akali side of things. And Urgot, I think anyone could play. But all in all, this was the biggest challenge for RNG and the likes of many teams, that the top side was so, impactful in the game. RNG walking into this series, nevertheless, was looking as a strong favorite because G2, coming out of groups, they were limping very hard in a group that was considered quite easy. This was a different time altogether because you actually had groups at Worlds that were considered easy. That's not a thing anymore. Every team that is a representative of Korea and China nowadays is a very dangerous team. So after this, no one thought G2 was going to... everyone thought that G2, the story of G2, they've gotten so far already that, this is going to be the end. They got a tough draw. The weakest first seed was the one in their group. Then again, they could have either drawn KT Rolster, or they could have drawn Fnatic or RNG, and that, all of them, they would not be the favorite against. But, not to be kept in hindsight, but this was probably the best draw they could have ever hoped for, because G2 had a very strong top side, and all in all, when you look at RNG's identity as a team, they wanted to be the team that dominated through bottom side. So the main thing I want you guys to pay attention to is just the level of precision from Perkz. Jankos really gets the ball rolling with some clever ganking patterns and really understanding the limits of what gank will work and what gank will not work. This I feel like has always been the strongest point of Jankos, that he really has an eye. He's like Iniesta, he has really a good eye for what plays will really make his time worthwhile. And he could really stretch that barrier thin in terms of really making the precise decisions. Really insane from Jankos. But of course, this is Perkz's Immortal game, but it's important to highlight also Jankos, who played a very big part in this game. But the main thing I want you guys to pay attention to is just Perkz's understanding of how much damage he does, understanding of his limits, understanding of the little nuances that will really make a big difference in terms of being first to places, and really truly understanding his limits at a level that is truly spectacular. This is a 10 out of 10 performance game. Let's enjoy it together. Run out, and Jankos is just going in here for level 2 gank, and they thought, no way in hell this is something that is going to be happening. Uzi couldn't click the lantern, everyone was spamming wards on top of it, and this was a big part of the story of this series too, that everyone was just dropping wards on lanterns. Olaf level 2 ganking is something that they didn't expect. This is something that we saw more on the likes of Gragas and Camille, but Jankos really enjoyed his Olaf, some other junglers did too, and he's just trying to make it work in that meta as well. You know, something that I mentioned before is that, you know, this is not the greatest LeBlanc game. LeBlanc was very strong on this patch, so you could say that it just didn't matter. But all in all, playing LeBlanc into Rise and Sion, it isn't the most comfortable experience. They know the pink ward position, the pink ward is placed good, and then you have here the R, and then Zhao here on the melee range could have potentially flashed with the phase rush out, but here we go, and then boom. Very important kill here. Yeah, here Zhao could have survived if he uses flash appropriately to either dodge the chain or maybe take the riskier approach of phase rushing out after the second chain hits and just flash out. But all in all, very important kill here for Perkz. He gets the Mercs by, and Rise is going to TP back to gain tempo. Uzi's on the board. This was always the race, you know. It was always the question of, can Uzi carry enough to deny anything that G2 throws at them? Yeah, during this patch, if you manage to get 2 Elder Dragons, the buff would last for 5 minutes. So if you managed to get 2 Elder Drakes, you would have a buff of 5 minutes. It was completely ridiculous. But of course, it needed to be ridiculous, because if you manage to get 2 Elder Dragons, probably the game should be over already. So Riot was just like, yeah, come on, just get it on, yeah? Okay, let's just move on with the game, end the game already. And that's it. Olaf pathing into topside, once again on the wave that is pushing out, needing to make sure that in a case where Nocturne is going to ult on top of the enemy, on top of your own bot lane, that you're going to be there and ready. And here the fight starts out. Braum shield is doing so much work. Very important here, and then we see the LeBlanc, just because of that difference in timer. Boom. She gets a double. So very smart play here, of course, by Olaf to always recognize this is the weak point, and this is where Nocturne can always ult. Ulting into the LB with Mercs is not going to be that easy, and if Aatrox has summoners and ult up, it's not that easy to kill him as well, and you could almost safely assume that MLXG is always going to be behind Uzi. So it's very important that you are there to fight 3v3 in a case where you are stronger 3v3. And you could see here that G2 was just, every prior they had, they hovered into topside, hovered into topside, hovered into topside, hovered into the Olaf, and hovered into the Braum and Chin.
As it stands, G2 are 3-1 up in kills. They've got a 500 gold lead. And Cannon has been the recipient of both of those Lantern kills. If you look at the item differences as well, Perkz has got himself the Luden's Echo, and here comes MLXG. He's still got that Rift Herald, but Ming's death sentence goes
very dangerous the way Ming looked on the gank here. Very desperate, in fact. Here comes LB first, even though the Rise has a portal. Aatrox cancels the Sion TP as well.
Perkz blows up RNG, and G2 win the fight.
It ends up being a 3-0 in favor of G2, and with this early comp that they've drafted, this is the perfect.
Very important kills here, very important, crucial in fact. Here, look at here the LB play here, that he's just sniffing out the move of Zhao. He really wants to leverage his advantage here. He's going to get ult up very soon, Perkz, and then he looks for the kill here, one rotation. The most OP thing here about LeBlanc at the time, I'm going to show you, because they actually press LB here. LB, she has her Luden's proc right now, okay? And what was so insanely broken about LB was that Luden's Echo would charge depending on how far you traveled and how far you, like how many spells and hits you've done. So basically there was 2 ways of stacking your Ludens. So here, the Luden procs, right? It's 2, and then she ports back and she gets 50 because the distance traveled. And this is what made LB so insanely OP. Like insanely broken. Because you could get, sometimes, if you WRQ hit E, and while your E is in the air, you port back, and then you will get the second Luden's proc. Oh my goodness, I forgot about this one. The speed of this, the speed. This speed is sensational. Let's do that in 0 to 75.
Game 5 with RNG.
And for the vast majority...
The root comes in. And the fact, you know, it's very essential here that the flash comes in here, right? Because it becomes a lot harder to play this play. A lot harder.
So close. The Ignite is ticking.
You see here as well, this was a combo that applied Ludens twice. Because what did Perkz do? He did W, flash, R, then to his R, and then he procs Ludens again, right? This is what I mentioned before. The Ludens was strictly based off of how far you travel and how many spells and attacks you've done. So you see here that Ludens procs twice. That's one Ludens. And then he TV's back, Ludens again. And the Ludens little diggity do here is what kills the Sivir. Crazy, no? Crazy. Main thing here, you can see the mistake from G2 is that they actually give a point of entry for RNG. Here there's vision, and they have a little tunnel to walk through to make sure that they have access to this Nash. And just these wards that they've placed allows them to enter. If these wards weren't there, it would be a lot harder to face check. You see Sivir is already walking from that angle, and then they blue trinket from afar, and then when they spot so many people on the blue trinket, they know they can face check, and now you give, of course, the enemy a potential entry unless you're looking for that turn. Here I believe that G2 turned a little bit too soon. I think they could have hit for a little bit longer because this is a little bit too premature. I think it's very important to allow the enemy to cross the choke. Cross the choke, and as they cross the choke, then you throw your spells, and then you look for the turn. The turn could have happened when the enemy crosses here. They are not through the door yet. You need to make sure that you open the door when someone rings on it. You don't want to keep the door open and, you know, run through it, because odds are you're the one then, you know, going through the choke, and you're the one that is going to be putting yourself in danger. So here, even though Perkz managed to kill the Thresh, they did put themselves in a significant disadvantage, and G2 was a little bit disjointed here in the fight. They gave RNG a fighting chance. Keep in mind that they are very far ahead, right? So to give RNG any fighting chances here is definitely something that shouldn't be acceptable. But of course the nerves and the stakes are very high. Perkz manages to find the cancellation here. Sivir is in a very bad spot, but no continuation here from G2 as Wunder is not looking to TP in, and Riot already responded. RNG get away with this one. Now the IE is finished on Sivir. She's slowly going to reach that critical point. You see here Perkz is going very early on, he gets flayed and he loses a lot of HP. I think in a world where Aatrox doesn't look to follow up on this, maybe something could go better. Let's see here, maybe it isn't Aatrox's fault at all. Maybe they could have just hard committed here and just gone in. I wonder if this is just a situation where the Nocturne makes the fight so difficult to play. Because when I'm looking at it now, it looks like a situation where going forward is definitely a very easy option due to how strong they are in Aatrox's position. I think there's just a Nocturne ultimate that makes this a lot more difficult. Naturally, as a more principled thing, you want the enemy to cross here and to enter. LeBlanc breaks those rules, of course, because she can cross walls and she can TV back and she can poke very freely. But generally speaking, you want the enemy to cross before you turn away from the Nasher, especially when the enemy already used their blue trinket. They could have potentially threatened a finish, and then they could have looked to turn as the enemy crosses here. But now looking at it, it looks as if the Nocturne ultimate is causing enough issues here to make it difficult for them to make a appropriate decision. Because here they continue to chase in, Braum and Aatrox die. Let's slow down now as we are slowly reaching the apex of the game. And we can speed up a little bit longer because people are basing. There's no Nasher to be taken. G2 rinse and repeat, clearing all the vision around Nasher. They can just start hitting it and then look to threaten the fight once again. Right now they are so strong, and Uzi has no summoner, so it changes the fact here. I think it's important that they make sure that this blue trinket is not shown there, make the waves crash, push them all the way in, and then they can just turn around, start the Nasher, and rinse and repeat over and over again. They just want to make sure that G2 are forcing RNG to enter. Realm Here we have the turn. Once again, a little bit too soon. A little bit too soon. G2 Wunder still has the GA. Alright, same mistake here from G2. They're just turning a little bit too soon. Very important here though that they managed to get the GA of MLXG of the bullets of Jin.
Perkz out of the distortion that would have gotten them onto Uzi. RNG win another fight and buy themselves a new lease on life. Exactly that, Azale. They even find themselves a kill, and the momentum from G2 is starting to slow down. They were in such commanding control of this game.
As you can see here once again, the turn is just way too soon. Here Perkz could have chunked Ming for free, and they could have just walked out and continue hit the Nash, and then let them cross the pixel, and then you look for the turn. Because here they are doing a turn, and keep in mind, the chokes work two ways always. A choke always works two ways. If it's narrow to get out, it's also narrow to get in. Right? So in this moment, you see all of G2 going through this funnel, right? And that is not going to be a situation where you want to fight. Very crucial here from Yanan on Jin to manage to find a situation where he actually managed to get MLXG's GA here off of the bullets in the back there. Boom. And then another one. Zhao is not being a helpful bro here. No soul, guys. Souls didn't exist just yet. Just gave you statistics.
To save worlds.
Yeah. And there's enough vision around this barren area that G2 do not have full control. But
boom.
Perkz got a little bit caught out there. Lim manages to escape with his life, but Ming is dropped very low. Uzi! Yangus has got one. Uzi forced to flash away, and Wonder's trying to chase him down. The Infernal Chain will pull him backwards. Darkness comes out from the paranoia. And the
Zhao was doing a lot of damage in this fight.
Perkz is melting G2 Esports. Perkz is running for his life. The Infernal Chains comes down. It pulls Xiaohu backwards. That's one of the AoE monsters. Yes,
yeah, not so easy for G2 to play in a straight up back-to-back. I mean front-to-back fight. The DPS is just very high from RNG. So if the fights go on longer, they will get more rotations of spells. While G2 want to play a little bit slower. Because they quite literally have less bullets. But they have longer distances to play with. And they need to create a situation where the enemy is forced to engage into them by provoking through poke.
At least one more team fight is guaranteed.
Now they're syncing up the waves a little bit better here. You can see G2 is crashing bot, they're crashing top. Now it's a lot better, right? You can see the impact here that they can only defend whatever civ it is. Bottom is crashing, you're getting chip damage. And pay attention here, the shield.
G2 have just dismantled RNG, and they're gonna make their way to the semi-finals!
G2 Esports will find another kill, will tear open the base, and Busan is cheering and screaming and crying! The underdogs reign supreme at Worlds 2018, when expectations were at their lowest. The G2 dynasty will be defined by taking down RNG.
Oh, they're all so young, man.
To describe the results of today's quarterfinals.
They did it! G2 actually took down RNG. I cannot believe that they were able to do it. The third seed from Europe having to fight their way through the play-ins after, before that, even losing in the quarterfinals of the European LCS playoffs.
to now getting through group stages off the back of a Heimerdinger, and then winning at the very end off the back of Perkz and hit this fantastic G2 squad.
And it's at Worlds where legends will fall and new ones will rise up and be born. And we see Perkz today making his stamp on this Worlds, 11-0-4.
And listen to the crowd, G2 cheers. Perkz was the center man, the team was rebuilt around him. He was unable to make it to the bracket stage at World Championships when he had better players, as the world would say. But it is this G2 that is playing their game that rose to the challenge and took down RNG in an exceptional 5-game series.
The favorites are gone. KT is out. RNG is out. G2 will meet IG in the semifinals. It's anyone's game. It's anyone's game. I mean, what else can you say?
Little did he know about this. Oh, what a trip down memory lane. 2018 was an incredible year of League of Legends, where, crazy enough, Worlds was in Korea and there was no Korean team in the finals. The Korean teams were slain left and right, and at the end of it all, in the semis, you had C9, Fnatic, G2, and IG. How crazy is that even to consider? This game is truly a thing of beauty. This is a really nice one. And of course, we congratulate Perkz for his wedding. You know, he's starting a new chapter in his life, and I wish him the best of luck in this upcoming year on Vitality. That is going to be a very exciting team to watch, with the likes of Bo swinging his massive dong, with the leadership of Perkz on that team, and players that will be like-minded in their approach. I think the Vitality roster is looking very exciting. We need to think about which one we do next. Please let me know which one we should do next. We could do Faker, we could do Smeb, we could do Viper, we could do Caps, we could do Pawn, we could do Deft. There's such a long list of players and iconic games. We could do Uzi, we could do Bengi, we could do Marin, we could do Huni. Like, there are so many iconic games that are really, really memorable.